The 4th of July is a time for families to spend time together. One of the more common things families do is grill. Our Logan Riggenbaugh talked to the Public Information Officer for the Mid-Ohio Valley Health Department about how people can stay safe this weekend.
With Independence Day coming up, a lot of people will be grilling and cooking food outside to celebrate the holiday. The Mid-Ohio Valley Health Department says grills should be placed away from eaves, railings, or anything that can catch on fire. Prior to grilling, make sure your grill is in working order and clean. Amy Phelps, the Public Information Officer with the Mid-Ohio Valley Health Department, says you should use different utensils when cooking and handle food properly.
Especially important, you need to use them within 2 hours or 1 hour if it's above 90 degrees and everything. You don't want to keep leftovers any further out than that.
If you are using a gas grill, the Mid-Ohio Valley Health Department reminds users to make sure the lid is open before lighting. Children and pets should stay at least 3 feet away from the grill. Amy says they could get hurt if they are not careful.
It's usually burns, and a lot of times it does involve like pets and children because, you know, they're getting too close to the fire. And then, yeah, just someone cooking and accidentally hitting their arm or whatever on there.
The Mid-Ohio Valley Health Department warns if you eat food that was not cooked to 165 degrees, it may cause an upset stomach, fevers, and more. Do not leave fat deposits on your grill as they can catch fire.
Well, fire, you want to call, 911 and everything. Minor burns, just, use some burn ointment, that you can get at the pharmacy and that kind of thing. And then if it's really bad or if it's still, especially like if it would be, like raised, like peeling and everything, you might want to go talk to, 911, like the emergency room or your healthcare provider, depending on how severe the burn is.
Reporting from Parkersburg, I'm Logan Riggenbaugh for WTAP News. This is home.